This is lecture 4 from chapter 15 on microbes, picking back up with protists. So the last of the protist groups are the plant-like protists, and these are all organisms that grow in water, so there are no plant-like protists that are up on land. That was one of the things that makes them different from plants, because all plants are going to be up on land, with a few exceptions of ones that actually return to water, like things like water lilies and things like that. And they can resemble plants. So there are things like the seaweed and the kelp and some algae that look like plants when they grow as a multicellular organism. But as for the most part, most of the plant-like protists actually don't look like plants. And the one thing that they do have in common with plants is that they can do photosynthesis. A lot of them are green. So one that's not here in the pictures that I've got a little stuffed version of is a euglena. So you can see here the euglena has a pair of flagella, and it's actually even got little chloroplasts sewn onto it. This also has up here on the front a little red eye spot. This is one of the reasons why some of these organisms are in the protist group, other than the fact that they're single-celled, which this guy is, and that is this guy can actually see. That's what the red spot's for. It's actually a light detection cell, and so or structure, and so it can actually detect light and swim back and forth, up and down, in order to put itself in the right spot in the water. So little different as far as that goes, and not all of the plant-like protists are green. As you can see, there's this red one here. I've got some little ones here. These are dinoflagellates, so these are little red guys, and these are actually red. These actually cause what we call red tide, and they are going to be a red color because that's the actual color of the organism, but they still can do photosynthesis. There's also yellow-green, yellow-brown, all different colors for the plant-like protists, but they can all still use those pigments to do photosynthesis. So who is this include? It includes the algae, which most of these guys over here are different types of algae. You've got the dinoflagellates, so this is a different one. This one looks kind of like the Eiffel Tower. You've got the seaweeds, so that's what this whole row here is. And you've got things, weird things, like this one's called Volvox. It looks like a bunch of little balls inside of a big ball. This is actually, the little dots are individual cells, and the little balls inside are actually new big colonies like this that are growing. So when they're ready, this whole big one will fall apart, and all these little ones will go out and basically turn into versions like this. So plant-like protists can be unicellular or multicellular, a very, very wide variety. There's actually one group that I'm going to focus on, and that's actually this guy right here, because they're unique compared to the rest of them, and that is the diatoms. So diatoms, these are unicellular and they're microscopic. The way that they work is, I've got a giant petri dish, so you've got two halves, and the two halves come together. So they actually fit just like this, and the organism is actually inside of the shell. The shell is made out of glass or silica, and these guys are important because they are part of what we call the phytoplankton. And if you look over here in this picture, here is a diatom right here. There are some other little algal cells floating around. And this phytoplankton is all through the water. And these phytoplankton are responsible for 25% of our photosynthesis on Earth. They are actually one of the major providers of oxygen for us, which, if you think about it, makes sense because most of the planet is covered in water. And so it should make sense that a good amount of our photosynthesis is happening there. So why else am I focusing on these diatoms? Well, they make up a good amount of the diet of the food for bigger organisms. So you've got diatoms being part of the phytoplankton. They get eaten by something like copepods. These are zooplankton or animals, and these little animals are then going to get eaten by something big like this whale shark. So they are a big part of the food chain that's out here. Also, you may have heard of diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is actually made up of the shells of diatoms. We use it as an organic insecticide because it gets inside of the shells, the exoskeletons of insects, and basically shreds them from the inside out. I know it sounds kind of gross, but it's very effective as an insecticide. All right, so the last thing with protists is talking about how some protists can make you very sick. So the one that we've talked about already is Plasmodium. Plasmodium is the actual protist. It's the one that causes malaria. So the way this happens is you get a mosquito that is infected with Plasmodium. When they bite, they actually inject saliva, and if they're infected with Plasmodium, they will inject that parasite into your bloodstream. Eventually, that parasite will make it to your red blood cells, like we saw with sickle cell anemia, and they will get in, they multiply inside of your red blood cells, and they modify your red blood cells so that your immune system doesn't identify them. So this makes it very difficult for your body to deal with it. In addition, since they're inside of your red blood cells, it makes it difficult for us to treat them because they are basically inside of part of your body. So it's not like we can give you something to destroy your red blood cells to destroy the parasite, because then we destroy all of your red blood cells. And since they're kind of an important part of your body, we don't really want to do that. So one of the things that we do to try and treat malaria is we try to put chemicals into your bloodstream to kill the parasites when they're here before they invade the red blood cells. Now, are these the only protists that cause diseases? No, there are some others. I do have a couple of them with me here. So I have one that is the African sleeping sickness, trypanosoma. Isn't she cute? She's purple and she is currently asleep. This is a blood parasite as well, and it does suppress your system and makes you sleepy. I know that sounds really, descriptive. This one's passed around actually by another biting insect called the tsetse fly. So it's another one that you can get in tropical regions. There's one that is actually one that you can get here. This guy right here, this is Giardia. Giardia is one that's found in ponds. It's a freshwater parasite. And the funny thing is that of all of the giant stuffed microbes I have, this one's actually accurate to have the two eyeballs, because when you see this guy as a slide, they actually have those two eye spots. This one is an intestinal parasite, and if you get infected with it, it creates things like diarrhea. You usually get it if you, for example, ingest like some mud, usually accidentally from the bottom of a pond. It's more common for us to see it in things like our pets, like dogs, but it is something that we can contract. That is also one of the protists. All right, so that brings us to the viruses. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop here and pick up with a new lecture with the viruses. That way, hopefully, most or all of the virus information will be in one lecture.